Think the 27th pick is just a late round afterthought in the NFL draft? Think again. From the reliable offensive lineman who played forever to an explosive running backs with Hall of Fame peaks, this slot is a total wild card. Today we're counting down the top 5 players taken at number 27, including a Patriots dynasty anchor, a Texas legend, and a man who considered the greatest pure passer ever to grip a football. Is your team picking 27th this year? Let's find out if they're about to land a bust or a gold jacket. Guest historian Ed Kleese joins us once again on Pigskin Dispatch as we enter the pig pen and get ready for the NFL draft by looking at some great National Football League history.
Hey, Darin, how are you today?
I'm doing super, Ed, and I think we got some interesting folks to talk about that were drafted in the number 27 position. So what are your takes on this?
Well, we'll start with the theme that we've been talking about at the top for a lot of these picks, and that is recently the number 27 pick is pretty underwhelming. I went back again, my list goes back to 1980, and looking over the last 10 or 12 years or so, like Devin Lloyd, Tre'Davious White, Kenny Clark, pretty good players, but nobody that stands out, no home runs or anything like that. The top 5 is also going to be a little underwhelming. I thought this one was, I found a lot of okay players. There wasn't many busts or anybody that really stood out. There were some quality offensive linemen that weren't spectacular. A guy like Kevin Zeitler, who was drafted in 2012. John Fina played for the Bills for many years. And William Roberts was drafted by the Giants, and he played forever in the NFL. Now, those guys, they really didn't combine for many Pro Bowls or anything, but they had very long careers. We're in the league a long time, and we're kind of like rock-solid veterans. We had 3 years in a row, 87, 88, and 89, that wide receivers were taken 27th overall, and all 3 were underwhelming. Ricky Nattiel for the Broncos, Wendell Davis for the Bears, and Sean Collins for the Falcons. And I do not even remember Sean Collins in 19. I don't even know. I didn't know that name at all. So
the first 2 I did. I remember Nattiel and Tyler, but I don't recognize the third one either.
Yeah, they're very kind of, again, sort of like underwhelming, like, okay, fine. They hung around for a little bit. And then also not just receivers, but there was a theme with this pick. There were some running backs that made a mark very briefly. So none of these guys made the top 5 because they just didn't do it long enough. D'Angelo Williams in 2006, who had a pretty good career. Neil Anderson for the Bears, you'll probably remember, in 1986. If you go back and look at his numbers, a really nice burst there, right? Just for like a 2 or 3 year period. And then it kind of faded away. And then probably the most interesting one would go all the way back to 1980 would be Charles White. He was one of the more, popular, memorable college players, obviously won the Heisman at USC. He had one season around 800 yards, and then he had never had another one more than 500. He had off-the-field issues when he was drafted. He even came out and said that he had a big cocaine problem. It really hampered his career. He was drafted by the Browns, sort of the Cleveland story, I guess. That'll drive anybody to drugs.
Yeah. Right.
And then in the mid 80s, he was given like a new life by his college coach. John Robinson was coaching the Rams. He brought White in. And in 1987, Charles White was actually the offensive player of the year. The comeback player of the year. He was the comeback player of the year, and he led the league in rushing in 1987. And then he faded away again. So he had a, kind of that weird, 1 year resurgence. But he also did not make the top 5. He was probably my number 1 cut.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting draft because we've been talking the last couple, we've had 2, 3 Hall of Famers. That's one of the barometers that we can measure these drafts by. Only 1 Hall of Famer in this draft at this draft position at number 27, which I'm sure you're going to talk about here in a little bit. So I won't steal your thunder.
There will be 2.
Yeah, there probably will be 2, but as of right now, recording only 1. So I guess that sort of leads us into, who do you have as your top 5 picks?
Well, number 5, it's very strange for me to put him here because, the theme of the running backs and the brief bursts. Well, this is a running back with a brief burst, but the burst was so explosive that I had to include him. and that is Larry Johnson, drafted number 27 overall in 2003 by the Chiefs, running back from Penn State. He first couple of years, he didn't do much of anything. And then out of nowhere in 2005 and 2006, the guy had over 1,700 yards rushing in both years and 37 combined touchdowns. He also caught 74 passes over those 2 seasons. And that was sort of it. Like he had a bunch of injuries after that. He had a decent year in 2008, and then he was gone. And he was a very odd, strange guy off the field. There were some weird things that happened there. But I felt that his 2-year run was so – you could make an argument that for 2 years, he was the best player in the NFL. And so when you reach that peak, even if it's a short peak, to me, that's worthy of inclusion, especially when the overall list wasn't all that strong.
Yeah, can't say enough about, this guy. He did have those couple of real peak years, and then had some years that you sort of forgot about him, like you're saying. But yeah, I think it's a solid pick at number 5.
And then going on to number 4, again, this is not an overwhelming one because I didn't think the list was all that overwhelming. But I've got Devin McCourty, defensive back, drafted in 2010 by the Patriots. 13 years, all in New England. And that coincided with 3 Super Bowls, I believe. Yeah, they won 3 Super Bowls over that time. He was second in Defensive Rookie of the Year. He did make 3 All-Pro first or second teams. He had 35 interceptions, and he played in 24 playoff games. So, another reason I look at him is, during that was during, we had the 3 eras of Patriots football, the early Super Bowl champions, the drought teams that were good but didn't win it, and then the ones that won the 3. And McCourty was a big part of that last group that won the 3. He was one of the best defensive players, maybe consistently their best defensive player in that era of Patriots football. And, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I always thought it was kind of an interesting. I think they had that 1 or 2 seasons where the Patriots picked up his brother too, and they were both in the defensive backfield. I thought that was kind of a cool family reunion there.
And now we see them on TV a lot, and they're both really good in the booth.
Yeah, definitely great ball players that know their football.
Yep. So moving on to number 3. This one surprised me a little bit. The numbers were a little bit better. I certainly remembered the player, but the numbers were a little bit better than I remembered. That would be Roddy White. Drafted in 2005 by the Falcons, wide receiver. He was an 11-year steady performer. He had not to the extreme of like Larry Johnson, but he had a mid-career burst. He had 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons, so that's great as a receiver. And he had back-to-back 100-plus catch seasons, which is pretty rare in the history of the NFL. And he had double-digit touchdowns in each of those years too, so he was making some big plays. In his second to last year, he also caught 80 passes. So he was good throughout. He only played in 5 playoff games. They weren't the Falcons were sort of a middling team, but they did have some very good offenses with Matt Ryan. He overlapped with Julio Jones there a little bit. He was on the Super Bowl team that lost to the Patriots in the comeback game, but he wasn't a big part of the team. I think that was his final game. But he was a lifetime Falcon. Probably one of the better Falcons ever, and he's number 3 on my list.
I think that's another solid pick. Yeah, I can remember him. That was big news when they got Julio Jones to pair with him, because I think he was actually better before Julio Jones came on the scene. And you would think that would almost, Julio Jones would take some of the attention away from Roddy White, but sort of fading in the background a little bit. Maybe Matty Ice decided not to throw his weight that much anymore. I don't know.
He became a number 2 for sure.
Yeah. All right. So who do you have above Roddy White?
Well, speaking of number 2, I've got the other guy that I think our number 1 guy is clearly in the Hall of Fame. This guy I think is going. Well, I'm sure that he will be in the Hall of Fame, and that is DeAndre Hopkins, another wide receiver drafted in 2013 by the Texans. I think his career is interesting. It's not maybe the peak. Isn't quite as explosive as some of his counterparts, other receivers, but he had an insane stretch from 2015 through 2020. He caught 104 or more passes 4 out of 6 years. That's Amazing.
Yeah.
1,200 or more yards, 5 out of 6 years. And he did it all without a great offense, without a great quarterback. Those years, really his whole career, honestly, certainly through the prime of his career with the Texans and the Cardinals. Never great quarterbacks, never great teams, never great offenses, and incredible production. Some of the better hands we've ever seen, spectacular catches. And then he had a drop off where he's become a little bit more of an average receiver, but he's still playing. And again, he's drafted in 2013 and he's still going. He has 1,006 catches. And to me, that's a Hall of Fame absolute lock. No question about it.
Yeah, it's D-Hop, especially with the Texans, was just unbelievable. He was probably the premier wide receiver in the league for a few years of his career down in Houston, and still a very solid player. We saw him playing quite a bit this year, and had another decent year. As a number 2, really. It's hard to think of him as a number 2, but that's sort of where his career path has taken him. So yeah, I definitely agree with him being in your second slot.
So his bust will be in Canton next to our number 1 guy. And this will be brief, Darin, because number 1 is Dan Marino, drafted number 27 by the Dolphins in 1983 in the famous quarterback draft of 1983. What can we say about Marino? I'd say he's mildly polarizing when it comes to comparing to the other Hall of Fame quarterbacks. There's no debate whether he should be in the Hall of Fame or not. You'd be an idiot to argue that. But there maybe is a debate amongst the Hall of Fame quarterbacks where he might land. And the big thing against him was always, made the Super Bowl his second year and then never got back. That's probably the number 1 mark against him. Had some playoff disappointments, had some games where he didn't play particularly well in the playoffs as well. But really for me, that was always more a function of a team that had poor defenses, that teams in the Marino era never rose to his level as far as I was concerned. There weren't a lot of he really didn't play with any other great players. He really didn't.
Yeah, and that's as a Steelers fan, I think that might be one of the number 1 regrets. Here you had this kid that grew up in Pittsburgh, played at Central Catholic High School, played at Pitt, had pretty good careers in both of those places. And the Steelers ended up taking Gabe Rivera at number 21, which would have really helped them, a great nose tackle. He had gotten a bad car accident and was never really able to play for the Steelers. But that was always sort of the regret that throughout Marino's career, why didn't they take Marino? And there was talk where they were going to trade for him in the 90s, back in when Cowher first took over, they were talking about trading, but probably him and Johnny Unitas, letting Johnny Unitas go, are probably 2 of the biggest mistakes that the organization has made, that I think that they'll admit.
Sure. Sliding doors. You just never know.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, yeah, I think he's definitely a no-brainer on there. Some people that you didn't talk about, and I'm surprised didn't even make your honorable mention list. Mark Bruner was drafted, real solid tight end for the Steelers. He was sort of the Heath Miller before Heath Miller, great blocking back, caught a few passes here and there, but really helped with that power run game. And one of the most underrated quarterbacks of all time, I think, Tommy Kramer was drafted by Minnesota in 1977, sort of the guy that took over for Fran Tarkington after all those great seasons that he and I guess Joe Kapp had a few in between there when Tarkington went to the Giants. But what a great career Kramer had too, coming off the bench or when he started after Tarkington's career. So just wanted to make sure we mentioned those guys.
Got it.
Yeah, so I guess that takes us to some stats here. Our top position sort of flip-flops. We've been talking a lot about defensive players being the top position at the other slots we talked about. This time the running back is king at that slot. We've had 10 of those taken, so one out of every 9 picks has been a running back at the 27 position. That one Hall of Famer we talked about earlier is Marino. And we have our draft stat of the day. I don't know if you're ready for this.
I'm ready.
I see you're sitting down, so that's good.
Ready.
All right. This one, we've been talking a little bit about Oklahoma. You have your hat on the last couple days? Well, we're going to talk about my favorite college team. And that's Notre Dame, holds a remarkable streak of having at least one player drafted for 80 consecutive years, including the supplemental drafts.
Okay.
That is only outshined by two other schools. USC and Michigan are the only two schools to have an NFL draftee in every single year since 1939. So 88 straight drafts for those two schools having somebody drafted. And you think about that, you have some World War II drafts going on in between there where not a whole lot of guys were taken, and USC and Michigan both had folks going to the NFL.
That's very impressive.
Yeah. So I think that wraps us up for day 27 in our 27th slot at the NFL draft. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow and continue our trek towards that National Football League draft.
See you tomorrow, Darin.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.